I'm
Sure.
Roddy Williams of Sinclair, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's March 19th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Roddy Williams about Sinclair. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and it's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Roddy is a writer, creator, and artist originally from Nova Scotia. His collaborators on this Sinclair project include Chrism Zamora from Vampirella, Prelude to Shadows, Black Sparrow, and Lady Zorro for pencils and inks. Caroline Nolasco, Agents of Pact and Dodge, as colorist. David Howlett from The Last Paper Route and The Makers as letterer, plus Ben Tiesma from Dead Body Road 2 as cover artist. In addition, Chrism, Caroline, and Roddy are doing double duty with additional covers. The story starts for Sinclair in 1398 as Lord Henry Sinclair must lead the descendants of the Knights Templar into the unknown to protect an ancient secret from a ruthless cardinal and his mercenary army. In Sinclair number 1, Roddy and his team present the greatest unsolved treasure hunt in history in this medieval adventure. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Roddy Williams about Sinclair.
Roddy Williams, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
I don't remember the exact issue, but it was Superman. I was 4 years old, and Superman had just come out in 1978.
Oh, yeah, with Chris Reeves,
right?
yeah.
Chris Reeves, That was the one. That was a hugely formative, experience. Yeah, I went with my dad and some friends of ours, and it was either that night or a night after. I hadn't stopped talking about the movie, and Dad said, "Do you want to go get some comic books?" I'm like, "Sure." So we went down to, this was in Petitcodiac, New Brunswick.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so a local corner store had, the typical old racks, and it wasn't even a spinner rack; it was a wall rack. Started grabbing some Superman comics. I still have one of the first. It's one of those great Kurt Swan covers. Yeah, where Clark Kent is walking away from Superman in disgust, saying he quits or something like that. Yeah, it's still downstairs.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well,
yes.
Definitely Kurt Swan is a great influence, and certainly those guys who worked on those issues back then in the 70s. But I'm wondering, who influences your work today?
There's so many, especially for Sinclair. I'm looking at all those great Conan creators from back in the day. So Roy Thomas, John Buscema from the art side of the house, certainly Jason Aaron's run as well. Yeah, it really spans the decade. Walter Simonson on Thor.
Lots of good stuff there, that's for sure. Now, you mentioned the project we're supposed to talk about, which is Sinclair, and I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit what it's all about, and maybe the origins of the project.
It's about whether or not a fellow by the name of Henry Sinclair left Scotland in 1398 and began a journey across the North Atlantic to bring some fabled treasures to the shores of Canada, specifically Nova Scotia, and some of the mythology and legends surrounding that.
To be quite honest, I've done a little bit of research on this, but what made you delve into this particular aspect of Canadian history or Scottish history?
It's relatively unknown. And I was reading my notes over and some of the sort of journaling I'd made along the way in creating this. A tale surrounded around sort of these historical events. And it began on a trip back to Nova Scotia. I'm on Vancouver Island right now, and I was in Ontario at the time. So my wife and I were back in Nova Scotia for Christmas, and we were on a progressive party, which East Coasters will know what that means. We were on a progressive party going from house to house, and struck up a conversation with a fellow who we just got talking about history of Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, have you read Frederick Pohl's book on Prince Henry Sinclair?" He cited Holy Grail Across the Atlantic, or a couple different books around that that experienced a bit of resurgence in the years sort of following the Da Vinci Code, which sort of brought all that back sort of into the limelight. All these books started popping up again. So it was pretty good time for me to be able to go back and find some of these books that had been around for a couple decades, but had just sort of come back out and had a new following almost. And so from there, certainly doing that research, doing a lot of reading, having the ability to go to Oak Island. At the time, they were doing tours there. Curse of Oak Island, the History Channel show.
Right.
Right. So we got a tour of Oak Island and spoke with Charles Barkhouse, one of the historians there. Fast forward a couple years later, I'm back in Nova Scotia again on vacation with my wife, and we actually head up to Guysborough Harbour, which is just before Cape Breton Island. And they actually have a Henry Sinclair monument there. So I'm looking at the monument. I'm actually taking photo references as well, because at the time I was playing around with doing the art chores myself. I turn around, and my wife has been talking with this elderly lady who's at the site as well, and she ends up being the widow of an ancestor of Henry Sinclair. As fate would have it, she hadn't been to the site in a few years, and she just decided to go check on it that day. So there I am in the parking lot, able to have a chat with her and get some insight into a couple other pieces of the story that I hadn't found in books, which I hope to reflect in the series.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, it's kind of a unique perspective on, everyone's pretty much heard of the Oak Island mystery and the treasure, but no one's really looked at it way back, like how did things happen and where did it come from? That's a very unique aspect for sure.
Yeah, I think so. We're always drawn to, well, how did things get there? What are the origins of those things? And comic fans in particular, we always love origin stories. So as much as this is an adventure tale about Henry Sinclair, very much in the vein of certainly elements of Vikings, Game of Thrones, Indiana Jones, of course, which is a huge influence on me. Being able to sort of put all those sort of things that I've liked in those stories into something that I get to tell, it's been pretty cool.
Neat. Now, you're not alone in this project. You worked with some people on it. I wonder if you could talk about who are your collaborators and how did you bring them on to the project?
Couldn't be done without them, of course. For a couple of years, I had gone back and forth with doing the art myself, not doing the art myself. It's not the level that I want it to be. So I started going out on some of the various websites and looking for collaborators, work for hire, that sort of thing. I had gone looking at a couple different artists, and I saw Chrism Zamora's pencils and finished inks and gray tones and that sort of thing on Pencil Jack. Struck up a conversation with him, back and forth with emails and messages, and sent some of the concept sketches and photo references and things like that I was looking for. Talked back and forth about what each other thought about it. He was hooked, loved the subject matter, was excited to get going, and produce some really, really nice pencils and then inks. The Colors by Carolyn Nolasco. She's going to be a superstar if she isn't already. She's doing the color chores on Dodge by Matt Nixon.
Oh, right. Yeah. Good stuff.
And I was able to strike up Mike Ruth, and I sort of go back and forth on Instagram and that too. Those guys are putting out some amazing stuff. So Carolyn is just, she just keeps improving and just getting better. So one of the things that I had the opportunity to do with this was offer people the opportunity to do incentive covers.
Okay, yeah.
So Carolyn is working right now on her cover, which is going to be brilliant. She's still working hard on it, and it's actually going to be the first appearance of a major character in the story is going to be on this cover.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. Letters by David Howlett out of Dartmouth. Known him for 25 years on and off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dave is one of the guys at Strange Adventures. Dave does some great stuff on his own with The Last Paper Route, The Makers. And so he graciously agreed to come aboard and do the lettering for this. So I'm very fortunate with the crew that's come aboard. Mr. Benjamin Tiesma out of Ontario, who I know from my time in Ontario, put together an amazing cover that is featured on the Kickstarter right now. Benjamin just most recently did Dead Body Road 2 with Image Comics. with Justin Jordan writing that. So again, just another sort of home run to get all these people in one place to do this.
Great bunch of people there. Now, how did you collaborate with them? Was it an easy process? Just a matter of you had the outline and you sent it along to the various folks and said, okay, here's, do your stuff and then send it back? Or how did it work out for you?
I started off with the 8-page pitch sort of script. With the initial contact, a log line and a paragraph about what it is. Start off with that 8-page pitch script. See what people think, what they come back with. With email these days, it's pretty quick. Mm-hmm. A lot of art is done digitally now as well, which cuts down on the time. So as far as Chrism, he could bang off a page in those rough sort of preliminary pencils in the matter of a couple of days, send it back, and start going through that feedback process and making tweaks and that sort of thing. Same with the other collaborators as well.
So the back and forth process, did you notice that anything changed in your initial outlay for the narrative at all?
Coming at it from an artist approach as well as a writing approach, I want to let the artist be the artist. So when I'm writing panel descriptions, I'm not overly verbose if there's something key in it, but I want to see what they're going to bring to the table as well, and then we can go back and forth. And it's worked out really well. There's been very, very little, if any, there's been no major changes in what we've put out.
Cool. Glad it's working out for you. That's the main thing. Now, you mentioned a couple of the pledges already with cover art. I'm wondering if there's any that you want to highlight for this particular Kickstarter.
I've got a couple of different things that I've put on this particular Kickstarter. One of which, it actually worked out really well. I've had to go on a couple different tiers now, and that was the Be in the Book. It's the highest price tier on it. It's $200. What that does is get you all the books, so all the covers, plus the option to have a cameo page in the book in a future issue. And where I'm dealing with, we have, Scots, we've got Knights, we've got Vikings, we've got mercenaries. So there's a large selection for people to draw from. So it's really been pretty popular right across the board with every aspect of the audience.
Good. So we talked about Sinclair. I know that's keeping you busy right now, and certainly Kickstarter is not an easy feat. But I'm wondering if you can talk about what's next for you. What do you foresee down the road?
For Sinclair, this is the first of, I hope, 6 issues to tell this particular arc. So if this is successful, I'll immediately turn around and start work on Sinclair 2. The writing and the story is done. It's about getting Chrism, who's extremely busy, back to do the art and then to get those things out. So once Sinclair 1 is done, we'll start working on Sinclair 2 and 3 and 4. As far as other projects, I've got a couple other things. There's another piece of Canadian history that's been told before. I would like to take a stab at it as well, and that's the Rat River, I guess, manhunt that went on in the 1930s.
Oh, wow. I don't know about that one. That sounds pretty intriguing.
Yeah, so there was a fellow named Albert Johnson who emerged sort of out of nowhere into the territories and was causing a bit of mayhem and strife amongst the First Nations and the other trappers and people up in the territories. And that resulted in a 3-week manhunt with the locals, the RCMP, and the First Nations across the territory. It's made into a movie a couple times, notably with Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson, fictitious names, and sort of used that event and created another narrative around it. I would like to sort of sink my teeth into that. Again, these little known or little explored pieces of Canadian history, they're fascinating, and they're well worth trying to flesh out.
Very good. So I'm wondering where people can find out more about your current and future projects online and including social media. Where can they find you?
Well, I don't have a big web presence, but Instagram is the best place to find me at Rowdy Inc. ROWDYINK 2021.
Very good. Well, Roddy, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
Just hope people check out Sinclair, and if it's something they like, we'll consider supporting it.
Thanks to Roddy for the chat. You can discover more about Roddy on Instagram at Rowdy Inc. 2021. That's RODYINK 2021. You can discover more about Sinclair on Kickstarter.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.